Hello everyone, Russ of Aquarimax here. I hope you can hear me. I can see Sandy, Sherry, Frank the Tank, Abomination, Fluffy Bugger, Theropod Hunter. Oh, so sorry to hear that, Frank. That's awful. Yeah, hopefully this can be a positive thing like Ashley was saying. Well, welcome everyone. Hopefully you can see a few of the little critters skittering by. I'm actually going to say that I'm feeling a touch bad for this little beetle that's turned itself over. So let me make an adjustment. I'm sure it'll right itself eventually, but it might take a while and I don't want it to be stressed. So there we go. Get the little guy a chance. I don't know if it's male or female, but give the little beetle a chance, right? I want to make sure it has a chance to have a good evening like the rest of us. So, Critters and More, hello. Sad Florins, 503 Menagerie, hello. I'm going to show you, maybe I'm going to move it a different way, that might work, sorry. Figure out what works better. This right there, move the light a little bit. That I believe is an Iliotes obscurus, really big one, really big beetle. I've had bigger individuals of that species, but it's the biggest Iliotes species that I've ever had, and I really like it. Fun species, really pretty active, voracious, fun to have in a tenebrionid tank. They tend to be more day active than some. This little red-legged tenebrionid too, red-legged darkling beetle, the little one is really fun too, also very active. And then there's, of course, the velvet ants are all over the place. I've got a couple of orange ones in here, I've got red ones, I've got, different colors. I've got the one that's got markings all over it, the Dasimutilla dilucida, which I think is fantastic. So, lots of fun creatures going on. So we'll observe them for a little while. So what do I feed them? It depends on the creatures. As you can see just over here, I've got a feeder. This nectar, this is basically like hummingbird nectar, homemade hummingbird nectar. So the main liquid ingredient is water, and then there's sugar, just sucrose. It's approximately the ratio is 1 part sucrose to 6 part water, and then there's a tiny bit of salt added for electrolytes. And then behind that is some beetle jelly I get from Bugs in Cyberspace. They always have a little jelly pot of the Asian beetle jellies that he sells. It's like the premium stuff. Has extra nutrients in it. Smells like brown sugar. Love it. I don't eat it personally, but I love the smell of it. And the beetles and the velvet ants really love that. And then I give them all sorts of little bits of things. Dog food and cat food and vegetables of various kinds. You can see maybe some little bits of dried vegetables that they eat. They'll even eat them when they're dried. A lot of the beetles will eat them when they're quite dry. So I leave them in there for a while and I periodically clear them out. They eat all kinds of things. There, the little beetle is taken off. They do play dead, that species. I think it's, my cousin was saying it's probably Usatus muricatus, little dune buggy beetles. Different from the Edrotes dune buggy beetles. They're a little bigger and a little bit more matte in coloration than the dune buggy beetles. Here comes the Dasimutilla dilucida. I love those colors. And the Iliotes obscurus. There's a lot more in here than what you see right now. So if you see something, just because you think you've seen everything after a couple of moments, you probably haven't. This tank is constantly changing with the time of day and just when things are taking a rest and stuff. It's fun. So, feed them a lot of things, and they are very active. The velvet ants especially are active in the evening before it's dark. These are all diurnal velvet ants. Oh, there he is, Bryant Wilson, possibly a distant cousin. Crystal Treepy, Eileen O'Donnell. And yes, let's smash those buttons. Toilet Pete, there you are. Nice to have you here as always. How's the focus looking? Hopefully it is okay. I can't tell if it's fuzzy because just encoding on my end, if I'm messing something up. But the new velvet ant, the big fluffy orange one, that is a Dicymutilla satanus. Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, glad to hear it's clear. Thank you for those of you who have chimed in on that. Appreciate that. And I'll open up to some, oh, that's not the button I meant to push. There. Now everybody can chat. I didn't mean to push super chat only. I meant to do live chat. So there we go. We're back again. Garrett Roberts, hello. All right. So a couple of chats or messages. I'm going to get to the one. This one was from Eileen O'Donnell. And she's in the chat, or was a minute ago, so hopefully still there. She said, hey Russ, would Armadillidium vulgare punta cana and Armadillidium vulgare T positive albino be considered morphs of one another? In other words, if you put them in the same enclosure, would they breed together or would they outcompete one another? Great question. So, because they are the same species, but they are different morphs of the same species, so they would interbreed, and that's how we got gem mix, from mixing lots of different Armadillidium vulgare morphs. They cross just fine. There are many, many different morphs now, of course, of that species, and they all seem to be able to interbreed with no problems whatsoever. So, yes, you could put them together and you'd get some kind of gem mix. Maybe not the most varied one if you only put those two types together, but you would get something of that sort. So, great question, Eileen. Hopefully that addresses it. Let me know if you need some additional clarification on that. Now, I'm going to go back to the chat. Probably missed some things. So, Theropod Hunter, 7th and final black beauty stick insect hatched today. Hatched recently, and today two of my Persian jewel beetles emerged and are now in my paludarium. That is awesome. That sounds really cool. I'd love to see photos of those. We can't keep the stick insects really in the U.S. Very few can be kept here. And Persian jewel beetles, I don't think we can keep it all, so I'd love to see those. So, Mackenzie Bowling, do you have any tips on sourcing invert safe veggies? Well, the easiest way is grow your own and don't use any pesticides. I do quite a bit of that. A lot of squash, zucchini, and that kind of thing. But of course, not everybody can do that. I think a lot of people will say, well, organic is worse than conventional. I'm not going to say it's worse, but I do say that, you know, organic pesticides can certainly harm insects because that's what they're intended to do. So pesticides, you need to make sure you are doing things like peeling things that can be peeled and thoroughly washing anything that they're going to be exposed, any surfaces of the fruit that may have been exposed to pesticides that they're going to have any contact with. So with something like a banana, of course, you can peel it and you're going to really minimize the risk of pesticides. With something like a cucumber, zucchini, same kind of thing, peel it and that's going to help a lot. So washing, peeling, basically that seems to work with seems to be enough for a lot of them. So hopefully that helps. Thank you, Mackenzie, for the question. Just wanted to point out, hopefully you can see it, that this Eleotis obscurus is really going after the beetle jelly from Bugs in Cyberspace. I love this beetle jelly, great stuff. If you haven't purchased beetle jelly for your beetles or velvet ants from Peter, you know, he's a great source for it. And I would also say that it also works for a lot of other bugs. A lot of other bugs will eat it. I'll give it to my isopods, things like that. They like it. Good stuff. So, go back to the chat and substrate. JH is asking about the substrate in here. This is basically play sand with some other organics added to it. I have leaf litter mixed in. I have some flake soil, I think, mixed in, which is fermented oak sawdust. I think I may have some cocoa fiber in here, things like that, as well as some you know, the bits of the dried vegetables are on there too, on the surface. You can see some of that. So that's basically what it is, and it seems to work great. I am just going to disable an alarm that keeps going off really annoyingly every few minutes. I think I snoozed it by accident instead of silenced it. I don't want it to keep going off and off and off while we're trying to live stream. So just give me a second to try to manage that. There, I think I got it. I hope so. And back to the chat. So Young Smoke Pole. Just wanted to say hi from Canada. Love your channel. Love your isopods. Got my first colony of P. hoffmannseggi. Well, thank you, Young Smoke Pole, and congratulations on P. hoffmannseggi. Great species. Have a couple of localities of that, and they are fun. Fun creatures. Fun isopods. Huge size. Pretty beautiful. Okay. So, coming back to the Patreon, we have a question from Kevin Zay. Says, what percentage of the diet for giant canyon isopods should be made of protein? Great question. And I would say I have never been extremely precise about it, but I do offer my Porcellio dilatatus, which is the giant canyon isopod, along with pretty much all of my isopods, protein approximately twice a week. Usually in the form of fish food. It does take other forms as well, but generally approximately twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, whatever. I just don't overthink it. I think Porcellio dilatatus benefits from protein more than some, and is a protein hungry isopod. They're also kind of a secretive isopod, so they're a lot less likely to come swarm it in the daytime. At night, they'll be a lot more likely to swarm it than some other species. What I mean is they're a lot more likely to swarm it at night, whereas some other species won't care and they'll swarm it in the daytime, like Porcellio laevis, dairy cow, or Porcellio scaber even will swarm it more in the daytime. Porcellionides pruinosus, they'll tend to swarm the food in the daytime, Porcellio ornatus. But Porcellio dilatatus is a lot more likely to come do it at night. So, hopefully that helps. Garrett Roberts, thinking about getting millipedes, which species would you recommend starting with? Bumblebees are a good one. Ivories are another good one. Those are my 2 top picks for starting. Scarlets are good too. And you could do others. Look at this guy standing on his head. He is doing, or she, I don't know which one, he's doing just what I said that they do, which is nibble on the dried vegetables. When I put this beetle in there yesterday for the first time, that's what he did, or she. Went immediately for some dried carrot, I think it was, and started munching on it. So it's kind of fun. And you can see the difference in size between these 2 beetles. That is my smallest beetle in terms of mass, I would say. Maybe there are a couple more in here that tie for that, but that species is probably the smallest I have in here, other than maybe the Edrodes. And you can see there's quite a difference there. Kind of fun. So yeah, your dilatatus will be fine if you offer them protein a couple times a week-ish, I would say, Kevin, and it is a great question. So back to the chat. So 222 playlist. Will the beetles try and eat the ants? Nope, they don't. They do not try to eat the ants. These beetles are they're omnivorous, but on the detritivore side. They're not really predatory. And if they did try to eat the ants, they would have a surprise waiting for them. Wouldn't go very well. And probably the whole business wouldn't go very well for anybody, because while the velvet ants are very tough, they have very, very strong exoskeletons. They have these setae or hairs, which are very, on the scale of insects, they're quite tough. It's kind of like trying to eat a porcupine. And then they have a crazy sting, which they only use when they're pressed. So it's not like I have anything to fear. I can reach my hand in here like I did with the beetle to get that beetle out. I'm not going to pick up velvet ants and play with them. I haven't free-handled them very often, and only, on limited occasions for specific reasons. But I've never been stung by my pet ones. I have been stung by a wild one when I was about 10 years old because I didn't know what I was doing, and I bugged it too much. It was my fault, 100%. So anyway, velvet ants can defend themselves. The beetles produce a repugnatorial fluid that's quite strong, and I don't think anybody would be particularly pleased with an all-out battle between the two. But they're very peaceful with each other, fortunately. Don't seem to bother each other much. let's see. So, Kevin Zay, do I have any mantis species? I have. I don't currently have any, but I have kept at least 3 mantis species over time, and I like them a lot. They're great. The main downfall is that they don't live very long. So Ashley N, this may sound silly, but where do the velvet ants relax? Do they burrow? They do burrow. But they also, so they'll dig down into the substrate, but you see this piece of cork bark with all the holes in it? They'll often hide in there. They'll hide in the cholla wood. They'll crawl down the center of the cholla logs there, and I do find them buried under things. And then this little house, I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's like a little sandy colored sort of compound. It's actually 3D printed, and iBugman sent it to me when he sent me some of these velvet ants. I'm not sure if that was a year ago or 2 years ago. It was a good while ago though. Let me show you. This is 3D printed, and it has these little cavities under there. And well, there's actually an armadillidium. I'm not an armadillidium, sorry. There's a Dasymatilla klugi, a big one. She was hanging out under there. So that's one of their hides. I feel a little bit bad that I disturbed her there, but she's not going to be too upset about it. I'll scoot her out of the way so I can put it down without putting it down on top of her. Not that it would hurt her, but she probably wouldn't appreciate that. She'd probably prefer to go in there herself. She's a nice big velvet ant too, one of my biggest. Not even everybody is out right now. Not everybody's out to play. There's some other velvet ants in here. There's some beetles in here. If I were to lift this up, you'd see, oh, there's a sleeping velvet ant and some sleeping beetles down there. And the beetles are a little bit upset that I picked up this piece of bark, so I'm going to put it back down. They're not too happy. Maybe some of those other velvet ants and beetles will come out in a little while. So I'm going to close the lid now. You see, I wasn't worried at all about putting my hand in there and doing that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to say, Kevin, that was my first thought when I saw it, and I think it's awesome. I love it. Oh, wasn't even my biggest obscurus beetle. The one that was under the hide was, and he's coming out, or she's coming out now. So let me see. I'm going to move this back and see what we get. Oh, I messed up the piece of weathered sagebrush. Kind of. Where was it? No, I don't remember. Well, I'll put it there. I'll leave it there. That'll be fine. I'm actually planning on redecorating a bit here, but for now that'll do. We should still be able to view things as they come by. All right, so going back. So those are some of the places they hang out, Ashley. Great question. And wow, I just got a patron. Patron popped up, a notification during the stream. That is awesome. Do you mind if I shout you out? If you'd rather not, I won't. But if you don't mind, I'll shout you out. So, Frank DeTank, 2 people that have albino Hoffmannsegei. I've seen some pied ones too. They're pretty awesome. But I only have the Porcelia Hoffmannsegei, the nominate form, and then the black, which are both very cool. Nettie the Panda, hello. Doing well. Theropod Hunter, Armadillidium pulchellum, available in the U.S. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I can't quite remember. Great question. So, Richard at the Tarantula Collective, thank you for the super chat. How does someone acquire velvet ants? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do it. There are probably some velvet ants native to your area. So they can be collected in kind of sandy and hard-packed earth areas, especially in the fall. So this is not a bad time. Late summer, early fall is a good time to find them. And if you're light on collecting, it's not a bad way to get them. It's not quite the same as it is with reptiles and things like that. You can also check out places like Bugs in Cyberspace. Peter sources them. He can get them. This big orange one came from my cousin Bees in your backyard. He's a velvet ant researcher, and when he's done with his research projects, he gives them to me, and so I've received a few from him, and that's where the big old orange fluffy one came from. But yeah, Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace often has them. So yeah, that's a great place to start. In fact, you're going to go out and visit Peter pretty soon, Richard, aren't you? Is it next month? Like I did. I really enjoyed my visit out there. If anybody who hasn't seen our video series, 3-part video series of my visit with Peter and with Jesse of Shapes in Nature, both of them are from Sky Island Adventures. So much fun. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. And there's Wally in the house. Excellent. And I really enjoy doing the desert videos. Honestly, this is my dream. I want to set up a huge desert vivarium like this, but on a gigantic scale. Probably, you know, maybe like a 50-gallon tank or something like that. A really big one Big one. I'd love to do that. And let's see. Hello, Moon over Miami. And Paul Natsia, good night from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Velvet ants are Mutilidae, yep. The males usually has wings. They do. The males have wings. The females do not. How is it possible to control them in captivity? Do you mean how is it possible to breed them, or how is it possible to keep the males from flying away? Because I think the males are generally not kept in captivity. That's the big, huge drawback of velvet ants. One thing is they're pretty common in areas where they do well. Collecting them is usually how they're done. And most of my stuff is not wild collected. I believe in breeding in captivity when possible. Velvet ants, I make an exception for them because they do not breed in captivity so far. It's really very difficult to get them to breed, and I've heard of one specific instance where some people got one species to oviposit on their the species they parasitize, and then they were able to raise those, but other than that, there has not been a lot of things going on. So I would say, yeah. If that's what you mean, if you're talking about breeding them, then they don't really breed in captivity much. And Mackenzie, I'm going to give a shout out to Mackenzie for becoming a patron. I love it. Becoming a patron really does so much for the channel. I can't even express how grateful I am to all of my patrons. And to those of you who give super chats, these kinds of things really support the channel. So thank you so much. And really appreciate it, Mackenzie. I just had another one too. So if you don't mind a shout out, I'll also give you a shout out. That is so awesome. And all right, well, thank you so much. I'm catching up on the chat. Here we go. Yep, so Richard's going out there the end of September. Well, I think you're going to have a blast. Even though I was there on one of the days it rained a lot, we ended up seeing a ton of stuff anyway, so fun. And the other days it really didn't rain much, and we saw loads of stuff. It was life-changing, seriously, so fun. I hope you have at least as much fun as I did. I'm sure you will. So, Toilet Pete, the beetles, as opposed to the velvet ants, can reproduce. And Toilet Pete, you may know that I have been captive breeding blue death feigning beetles, and I have been helping people figure out how to do it. You know, publishing. I'm not the one who cracked the code, so to speak, but I guess I publicized how to do it, and it's been working. I've had people contact me saying I followed your methods and I was able to get them to breed, and even some closely related species. So we are cracking the code on breeding these beetles. Logan Loves Bugs has bred Osbolus laevis, which is a close relative of the blue death feigning beetle, recently, and had the adults eclose. I know that Invertebrate Dude is working with a lot of different tenebrionid beetles or darkling beetles, these desert beetles, and getting them to breed and having success. So we're working on it. We totally are. So yeah, it's happening. Okay, I keep moving that one beetle and it keeps going back to that same spot. I don't know what's going on with that. And Ian, Alicia, you should totally get the Desert Beetle sampler from Peter. That's what some of these beetles are, part of the Desert Beetle sampler, and he has some fantastic things. So totally do it. It is so much fun. The beetles are amazing. So Kevin, the velvet ants mostly feed on the beetle jelly and the nectar. They'll also take soft fruit. They'll sometimes nibble on juicy vegetables as well. I've seen them nibble on things like cucumber and even sweet potato. But mostly they go for the nectar and the beetle jelly that are over here in the corner. Sorry if the airplane, you can probably hear that. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn Super Chat on as the only way to chat. Did not mean to do that. I think I fixed it now. Okay, so catching up. Have you ever pinned beetles? Natty the Panda is asking if I'd pin beetles. I haven't pinned beetles as an adult. I think I did it as a kid, and honestly, it's been so long I don't really remember much about it. So anything I could say about it would be too old to be relevant. I mean, my memories are too vague of it. And so, yeah, I wish I could say more about it, but I don't really remember. And good question, though. So watching the yellow one is like watching either Benny Hill or Charlie Chaplin movie. I'm with you, Wally. Yeah, that one's super active. Kind of like the white ones I used to have. My cousin, the Bees in Your Backyard, he brought me a couple of Dasymatilla gloriosa, which were fantastic. They're kind of like the orange one, but white. And they were really super active too, and they're even active compared to the other velvet ants. So I love it. Let's see. So 503 Menagerie, you did the desert beetles from Peter. Yeah, Peter knows what he's doing. He knows how to put together a fun group of beetles. And Young Smoke Pulse, it was you. You're Adrian on Patreon. Excellent. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. So Jackson Manning, yeah, you should do it. They're so fun. So Supreme Gecko, Wally liked the Rainy Day and the Tarantula Underwater. And technically that was a Hogna carolinensis, so a wolf spider, not a true tarantula. It was a true spider, but it was tarantula-like in many respects. It was a large and hairy-looking spider with prominent chelicerae and whatnot, so I could totally see that. But it was super cool. I got a kick out of that. And Jackson Manning, that's cool. I like that. You know, when I lived in Hawaii, we were only allowed to keep birds and fish, and so we had a bird and we had some fish, and that was cool. But I really missed keeping herps while we were there. But they had cane toads there, really, really big toads, the giant marine toad, and I really got a kick out of watching them. At night, they would come out and eat roaches, which were everywhere in the grass. So it was cool. So the fact that you feed the toads at night, I think that's awesome. It's a good way to connect with the natural world even when you have restrictions. So JH, I am breeding more blue death veining beetles in the sense that I'm producing larvae. I saw a huge larva the other day. Unfortunately, it didn't make it. I moved it into a container, and something was wrong with it when I found it, I guess. It may have actually gotten too big before I found it, because that will happen. So it died a couple of days later. But yeah, I am breeding them. I'm just not having any eclose right now because the baby snakes are taking up too much room. I'm running out of space in this room, which is sad because there's so many things I want to do. But once I've sold almost all the baby snakes, I had 22. One was stillborn, so I ended up with 21 viable baby snakes, all of which did well and grew, and almost all of which have gone to new homes. I have 2 more that are going to Critters and More, who may actually be in the stream right now, early September. So I have to wait because I have to do some moving around of stuff, and it's all, I don't really need to explain, it's a long story, but before I can ship out the female to him, and I'm going to ship them both out at the same time, obviously, so I have to wait. And male and female going out to Braden, Critters and More. So, Ashley, have you ever kept rainbow dung beetles? I haven't, but I'm intrigued. My neighbor has he has an acre of land, he has an organic cow pasture. And I just thought, and he's the coolest guy, and I'm sure he would be fine if I went out and got some cow manure to do that. So I've been really thinking about doing it. I saw some dung beetles when I was in Arizona with Sky Island Adventures. They were awesome. So if you've seen, it's day 2. You check that out. That's the first time I'd ever seen dung beetles in the wild, even though they do occur in my state. And they were like a metallic green version. They were so cool. So I haven't. I would like to someday. And Ziphos. We are wondering too why, I've wondered why they shake their abdomens. My cousin, who's a Velvedan expert, says they may be using it to, they may be sensing something, or they may be releasing something into the environment, I think he said. I'm not sure exactly. I'm trying to remember what he said, but I think it's a sensory thing. And Valerie Jensen made it to my first live stream. That's awesome. Well, that's dedication. You're up late, but I really appreciate it. Glad you enjoy the content. And glad you're here. Young smoke pole in Toronto in the local parks. You have Platyarthurus hoffmannseggi and Andronicus dentager. Do you have these species or know if they are commercially available? I know of the species. I don't have them. I think Andronicus dentager is sometimes in the hobby. I'm not sure if Platyarthurus hoffmannseggi is really in the hobby. I think that's one of the ant commensals, isn't it? It lives in community with ants. But the Andronicus dentager, I don't think, I think that one is sometimes in the hobby. But I don't have permits for either of those species. So Ash M. Oh, you purchased your first Velvedant at a reptile show. That's cool. Do you know what species it is? That is so cool. Okay, I'm going on to the next question in Patreon. Do you have any info? This is from Heather Cellini. Do you have any info on breeding emerald tree skinks? My friend has a pair and would like to breed them, as most in the hobby are wild caught, which isn't ideal. She hasn't had much luck finding any info. Well, I have talked to Clint's Reptiles about that, because he's working on getting his to breed, and he's got, I believe at the moment, a trio. Last time I was down there, he had 1 male and 2 females. The second female was acquired from a separate source at a different time, and he is trying to get them to breed, and he does believe they are mating. In fact, I think he said they were mating, and so far I think his strategy, from what we said, and I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth, from what I remember, our conversation about it, was that he is trying to get them to just, he's heard that you can have them lay their eggs in their enclosure, and that they're not particularly prone to eating their young, so he's just kind of going the natural route, letting the female bury her eggs in the enclosure, in the bioactive enclosure that they're in, and then just they show up and everybody's fine. So yeah, that's about all I know about it. I hope he's able to get them to breed, and I hope your friend is as well, because we need lots of captive bred emerald tree skinks in this hobby, as I think everyone would agree. Wouldn't you all agree? I mean, how cool are emerald tree skinks? That is a hungry beetle, just munching away at that beetle jelly. So Sandy has a question. I have a 20-quart sterilite, so it's 17 inches by 11 inches by 11 inches, and one of those dimensions of the 11 inches is height. Says, I'm not sure if it's appropriate for an isopod enclosure, but maybe for an isopod that burrows. Which isopods are burrowing? Which burrow the most? Should I use this size enclosure? It's not a bad enclosure size. I have used enclosures of similar size or even higher. Do make sure that a lot of that height becomes substrate. Not all of it has to, of course, but a good deal of it. And you did mention that Cubaris, you didn't want to do Cubaris, like the expensive Cubaris at least. I would say depth of substrate is not wasted. Oh, this is fun. I don't know if I can get this, but you can see the little duckling, the little red-legged duckling crawling up the little thin branches there. It's kind of fun. And you can see my black, or my rough death fainting beetle coming up. Looks like it's going to come with some food. But that's sort of behind the nectar feeder. So I would say 2 that really burrow that you could really get to to do well in there probably. Silisticus convexus. So if you wanted to do Ukraine pied, Silisticus convexus, they're not super expensive and they're really cool. They're kind of unique creatures. So I would say that would be a good option. And then I'm going to focus in a little bit here and see what we can see if we do that. Another option would be the giant canyon isopods, Porcelia dilatatus. They're really burrowers too, and they're fairly inexpensive. And yeah, you could totally do either one of those. You did mention Hemilipistis reameri, which are a burrowing isopod. They actually burrow in North Africa and parts of the Middle East, and are very desert adapted, and part of that hinges on their ability to build these little microclimate burrows where male and female actually cooperatively build the burrow and take care of the young. One will go out and forage and bring food back to the babies. It's quite fascinating. So those sound super cool, but I don't think those are in the hobby really, but it'd be awesome if they were. There are some others that burrow, but those are the ones that come to my mind, besides the one that you mentioned, the Hemilipistis. And cool, great question. Let's look at Heather Cellini's question. Says, what vitamin supplements should I be dusting my fruit flies with for my baby morning geckos? I have Earth Pro A and Earth Pro Calcium as well as Earth Pro D3. Should I alternate like I do with my Leo? Well, from what I understand, it's important to be careful that make sure that the baby morning geckos and morning geckos in general don't get too much D3. Some is necessary, obviously, but they can be sensitive to too much, and they can also be sensitive to too much A. I did look up Arcadia Earth Pro A, and it seems to be provitamin A, beta carotene, which is good. Not sure how well morning geckos metabolize that, if they can actually take advantage of it and transform it into vitamin A like we can and lots of other animals can. I'm not sure whether they can or not. So, not sure what to say. I will say I would give them the calcium. If you use the D3, I'd go light on it, very light on it, because I was told originally to get the low D, the Repashy calcium low D, and use that rather than use the medium or the high formulation. And I did that for years. Now I'm using Repashy calcium plus, and that seems to work fine. That's the main supplement I use. I've used others too. I use the Repashy Super Pig, and I don't use the vitamin A supplement with my morning geckos that I have for my dart frogs, because I think it might be overkill, because it's not the provitamin A, it's the actual vitamin A. So calcium, definitely you could use that probably 2 to 3 times a week with them, and then maybe go really light on the Pro A and really light on the D3. And Ashley N has a question. I'm getting some Nezodilo Red Tiger from the Bug Hub. These used to be called Cubaris Red Tiger. Can you explain the change in name? To some extent I can. When a bunch of these Southeast Asian things like rubber duckies and Shiro Utsuri and Red Tiger and all these Blue Lemon and Jupiter and everything, when they started coming into the hobby, they looked a lot like Cubaris, and nobody was really sure what they were, but they started calling them Cubaris because they looked kind of like Cubaris. So, or whatever. I'm not sure if it was the fact that they were scientifically described or they had already been scientifically described and the literature was discovered, but apparently Nezodilo is their correct name now, and that's why it changed, not because they felt like there was a taxonomic issue that needed to be resolved so much as they were pretty sure they were never really Cubaris in the first place, but they were just using that name as sort of a placeholder, if that makes sense. Oh, Adrian, I see what you're saying. My niece painted an isopod on my arm. Maybe some of you saw a picture of that on Instagram or Patreon or Facebook or something like that. And it's pretty cool, saying you can have her change species of isopods whenever you want. Yeah, I showed her a zebra isopod and she just produced them. Sorry that this beetle's hanging out from right behind the nectar, but actually we can get a pretty good look at its face like that. That's kind of fun, huh? Nice big beetle. They'll actually drink, the beetles will drink right out of the nectar too. I've seen them do that. It's kind of fun. Let's see, did I get, just checking, make sure I got all the Patreon comments. I think I did. If I didn't, please let me know. Don't want to miss anything. But I think I got them all. So we'll do some more comments in the chat. All right, so you're welcome, 503 Menagerie. Happy to help. So Kevin's A, are we talking about the temp and humidity? What I've got going on for temperature, I've got a little light. This is a, what is it? It's like a 23 watt compact power fluorescent, because this is the equivalent footprint approximately of a 10-gallon tank. So I don't have a lot of room to use a really hot bulb. That would be bad because then I wouldn't get a good temperature gradient. But with the compact power fluorescent, I do get a temperature gradient. It gets up to about 89 here and about 80 or 79 here in the cool side when the light's on. Of course, we get a drop at night. And that seems to work out great in this container, this enclosure. And it's a little cooler in the winter because the room is, naturally just going to be warmer in the summer. So in the winter, it's probably, I don't know, 5 degrees cooler than that. So maybe it gets to 80 over here and maybe 75 over here, something like that in the winter, approximately, with a drop at night. Works great, and humidity is low. I do spray a corner once or twice a week, usually the corner over here. I spray once or twice a week. That's about all the humidity it gets. It's a screen lid. And this Beetle, what is up? I saw it a minute ago turn itself over, right itself after having done this, but keeps ending up in the same spot. I don't know if it's sunbathing its belly or it's just confused. I don't know what's going on. And why did it pick today? It just wants to do that on TV or something, on YouTube. Weird. Okay, so let me check where we are. And the little beetle I flipped over is I think it's a Eusatus moricatus, also known as a dune buggy, but it's larger than the Adrotes beetles, which are also called dune buggies. Larger and a little bit more matte. I do have an Adrotes in here. I think I see it. And the Adrotes are shinier and smaller, but otherwise very similar. I'm not sure. They do play dead. It is wiggling a bit, so maybe we can get it to do something interesting. Where'd it go? Did it take off? Nope, it just played dead. I couldn't see it for a second. See, it's much shinier than the other beetles. I don't know if you can tell on camera, and quite a bit smaller than the other dune buggies, but it'll probably start crawling around in a minute. We'll see. Let's see, where are we? Just trying to catch up with the chat, everyone. Lawrence, glad that my video on the fungus gnats has been helpful. Good. Oh yeah, the emerald tree skinks are awesome. Every time I've gone to visit Clint and we played with the emerald tree skinks, I just love it. Jump on you, crawl into your pocket. One crawled into my hood and I forgot it was there for a little while, of the hoodie that I was wearing. And they'll eat off of your hand, but they're not doing it so they can get food, which is kind of fantastic. Oh my goodness, that beetle did it again. I don't actually know, Geek Guy, a lot about pill millipedes. I've never kept any. And 503 Menagerie sounds like a good plan for your morning geckos. So Young Smoke Pole is using Repashy Calcium Plus with the morning geckos too. Cool. Yeah, I'm impressed by my niece's ability. She's quite young. I do have a large assortment of nieces and nephews, so I can't remember exactly how old she is, but I think she's about 10 years old. And we're pushing like 25 of them or something, so I don't necessarily always remember every age. But she's a good artist. It's true. So Ashley N, you can ship and sell Cubaris, really? Which Cubaris can you sell? Because I don't have that on my permit, and maybe I need to see if I can get those approved on my permit. And that's a good point, Frank. The CGD does have D3 in it. Okay, Supreme Gecko. I love the new brine shrimp hatcher that I bought another one because I like it so much. Lately I haven't been hatching a lot of them, but just because of time, not because of anything with the hatchery. I am so pressed for time that I've had to, change some of my priorities, and so instead of making sure I get newly hatched brine shrimp every day, I make sure other things that are a little bit more important right now happen. So yeah, if you want to do really large volumes of brine shrimp, they're not great for that. They really aren't. But if you want to make sure you have a decent amount of brine shrimp with the minimum of effort, they're great for that. And that was always what that was always kind of my point, because I never wanted to raise huge amounts. And let me see, Ash M, I'm going to try to check out your question on Patreon. Did you post it as a message, or did you post it to something else? Let's see if I can find it. Oh, I think I see it. Do you know anything about breeding or keeping Asian emerald roaches? Anything even anecdotal? I know you're not able to keep them. Oh, that's right. And I don't actually know anything. I bet Invertebrate Dude, though, does. He knows so much about roaches. I bet he would be happy to help you out and get some ideas on that. Invertebrate Dude's pretty amazing with his roaches. So is Kyle Candelian of Roach Crossing. Those are my two go-to guys if I need somebody needs roach information. So I would check with them. Ian Alicia. So the velvets don't seem to mind you being in there much. I'm guessing they don't sting unless you really upset them. Very true. You'd really have to try to get stung to be stung by a velvet ant. I think almost every time someone is stung, they're trying to smash it, step on it, get stuck in their shoe, something like that. Really, really have to bother velvet ants. So, yes, great question. Okay. Oh, criticism where you got the hatchling 2 yellow-bellied and 1 type C. Excellent. I would be interested. We can do some trading or whatever. Something like that. I want to get some of those in my collection. So let's definitely talk about that. And Crystal Treepy. Watching you and Clint together, you two have such amazing vibe. Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. I really get a kick out of it. It's an absolute blast working with Clint every single time. And we did another collaboration just, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago? Filmed another couple of videos. So keep your eyes peeled for those. They'll be coming probably in the next couple of months. Usually he's far enough out that when we make a video, it doesn't show up for 2 or 3 months after that. But about that time, you should see some. So 222 playlist. Mold in one of my new colonies just bought because this be from spraying the mold too much. Moss too much. Maybe, but a lot of times new colonies just grow mold, and that is one of the good reasons to start out a colony ahead of time if you can with springtails and no isopods to let that kind of settle in and let the springtail population build up, and they can start taking care of the mold. And the easiest things for the mold to attack have kind of been consumed a little bit. So you're less likely to get mold to really go. And if you're unable to do that, that's fine. Just as long as it's not going out of control, it's probably fine and it'll calm down a little while. But it could be from spraying something too much, but in general it's just because it's going to happen in a new colony to some degree. So Ian Alicia Perry, where's the best place to get permitting info? I think it's usda.aphis.gov is a good place to start. Permitting info is kind of confusing, to be honest. Someday I should just see. I'm going to see if I can invite. I wonder if he would come. I wonder if Carlos from APHIS would come and be on the live stream, and we could just pick his brain about it at some point. Would anybody be interested in that? Because I don't know if he would be able to do it, but if he were, I think it would be pretty helpful. So next spring, theropod hunter will be herping in a local forest, national park. It's abundant with frog hoppers. Cool. And you're welcome, Wally. I'm kind of feeling like you might want to produce more than it's a reasonable amount. I mean, it's a good amount for how much work you put into it. But if you're going to, I know you're doing your new channel, Supreme Aquaria. right? Is that the right name? Supreme Aquaria. And so you'll probably have more aquariums than you'll be able to produce with just one or two of those. More aquariums than you'll be able to supply with just one or two of those hatcheries. So young smoke pole. For isopods and many other invertebrates, you need permits. Basically anything that's considered a plant pest, and sometimes things unfortunately fall under that umbrella, whether or not they really merit the title. So things like isopods that are not necessarily going to be a huge deal, plant pest wise, are still considered plant pests. So Ashley, yeah, you may want to check on them, the Cubaris, because now that they are Nesodilo, it might change. It's true. Frank the Tank finding toads coming from the drain system. Weird. Not your average aquarist. Hello. And Ian, Alicia, they are so fun. If I had to pick my favorite insect, I would be hard-pressed to do so, but it might be Mutilids, velvet ants. A is for art. Can you cohabitate desert beetles with Vinegaroons? I would have some hesitation. I'm not going to say it can't happen because I've never tried it, so I can't say one way or the other for sure. But I would have some hesitation because the beetles are the right size to be prey for the Vinegaroons, but they also have some pretty powerful defense, just like the Vinegaroons do. Different defenses, but powerful. So I think it would be a problem if, you know, the Vinegaroons might well try to eat the beetles, and then they might get sprayed with the beetles' repugnatorial fluids. Okay. Well, I will ask Carlos and see what he thinks. I don't know if he could do it or not, but I'll ask him. Oh yes, Frank the Tank has put it Wally's new channel, link to Wally's new channel. Check it out. If you have any interest in fish of any kind, you should definitely check out Wally's new channel. All right. Ooh, we just got a super chat, I think, but I can't find it. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. There it is. So it's Richard again from the Tarantula Collective. So can't get over how active these velvet ants are. Are they like that all day, or do they chill at night? Generally, it's like this. Depends on the species, Richard. For example, some of these velvet ants are active almost all day. Others are more active, more crepuscular, so they're active more in the morning, and then they kind of chill for a while, and then they wake up in the afternoon and are active until it gets dark, and then they kind of calm down. But I do see them active even after the lights go out a little bit, but not as much. So they're most active in the evening, like this is prime velvet ant time, but it does depend on the species too. There's one of them that's usually really active right now and isn't today for whatever reason. I don't think it showed up at all in the video so far, which is sad because it's a big one. It's a big, impressive one. It's Dasimutilla occidentalis. It's red and black markings. Pretty cool. And she is usually everywhere, but not today for whatever reason. But yeah, they tend to be most active in the latter part of the day, like afternoon and evening, and then they kind of chill. So moth meats, you put your beetles in a 40-gallon? Ha! See, that's what I want to do. That's totally it right there. Something like that. So thank you again, Richard, for both super chats. That is awesome, and hopefully that answers your question. So Grant, Coniontis species. I don't think I have any Coniontis in here. I'm not sure of the IDs of everything yet, but I'm still learning a lot of the species. I think I know a lot of them down to the genus, but not all of them. Like the one that you can kind of see back here, that's Cryptoglossa moricata right in the middle of the screen. Here, this is Eucatus moricatus. Interesting, they have different species name. That is one that invertebrate dude knows, and it starts with an A. I forgot what it was. He told me, though, on Instagram. And this is Eleodes obscurus, I'm pretty sure. So, right. So I have an amblypygid or amblypygid, or however you want to say it, tailless whip scorpion, doing pretty well. I have an adult female I've had for quite a few years now. I want to say it's more than 6 years, and she's doing fine. I only have one though, and not your average Aquarius. No worries about that. It happens. And Anna Runquist, yeah, you're talking about this one, right? The one who's currently grooming her abdomen. They do this a lot. They'll lie down and groom their abdomen. It's pretty interesting. They all do that, and they'll often do it in a bright spot, like while they're basking, which is pretty interesting. Excuse me. And thank you for the like spike, Supreme Gecko. Appreciate it. We got 44 people in the house and 44 likes. Pretty awesome. They are pretty cute little critters, aren't they? I like this Dasimutilla visti for a while. And Ackley N. Ah! Ha ha ha! My nefarious plan has succeeded. Now he will let you get them velvet ants. That's excellent. And Richard, no, it's not weird at all. This is what passes for community these days. The Delta variant is rearing its ugly head, but we're having fun looking at bugs together. The way to do it. I mean, not that I don't like looking at bugs by myself, because I do all the time, but it's more fun in company, right? I really get a kick out of live streaming and talking with you all, conversing, chatting. It's fun stuff. So I've got about 3 minutes left. I'm going to give a double check to make sure I'm not missing something on Patreon. It can be easy to miss things sometimes, so I'm trying not to. I think I might have a new comment here somewhere. No, I guess not. I think I caught everything. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody's support today. It's been great. This has been a fun stream. I've been missing, sharing my desert beetle community with you, which has been evolving over time. I started out with a really small one, upgraded to a larger tank, and now I want to upgrade to one at least twice as large as this. And it is a blast, isn't it, Wally? I appreciate that. It's a lot more fun to watch it live than it is on the replay, even though the replay is okay. It's not necessarily the same thing. So not your average Aquarius, 12 by 12 by 12 by 18 Exoterra, the tall one, right? You could do morning geckos in there. That would be one possibility. It depends on what you're looking for. Tuesdays are where it's at for invert content. Yeah, we've got Tarantula Collective posting on Tuesdays, and you can come here for a live stream, and we've got some cool stuff going on. So yeah, thanks again, Richard, for the super chats. I appreciate it. It's always fun to have you in the stream. Huge colony of morning geckos in a 12 by 12 by 24. That's awesome. Oh, there's some good frogs you could do. I'm not your average aquarist. I know Clint has some starry night reed frogs. I think it's a 12 by 12 by 18. It might be a 12 by 12 24, and he's got this really cool colony of starry night reed frogs in there. It's really cool. And Valerie, glad you're able to join this one live. Yep. You are welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining in, and I'm going to take off, but I hope you all have a great night, and everybody stays healthy and stays safe. Here for your viewing pleasure is an Eleodes obscurus eating a dried carrot and a Eusatis moricatus just being an innocent bystander.